Greetings and welcome to another impressions video here at Words About Games, and today we're going to be looking at Kunai. Kunai is a 2D action platformer with Metroidvania elements that throws you into a post-apocalyptic world populated by artificial intelligence. You play as Tabby, a tablet awoken from a long slumber by a resistance group that is engaged in a struggle against Lamonkus, an evil AI that went berserk and destroyed humanity. You'll explore the world using a combination of Tabby's ninja and parkour skills and the various weapons and equipments that they find on their travels. Movement is incredibly important in most platformers, especially ones that feature fast-paced action or timing-based combat and puzzles. I can recall countless 2D games where the movement didn't feel quite right, a feeling that becomes amplified the longer you play thanks to the importance of how good the game needs to feel in motion. A large part of why games like Dead Cells and Hollow Knight are so revered comes down to how slick and satisfying their controls are, which is what makes them such a joy to play. I mention this because Kunai is a game that really nails its movement and combat mechanics. Within just a few minutes of picking up the controller and guiding Tabby on their journey, I already felt incredibly comfortable moving them around. Part of this is down to how many platformers I've played in my life, I'm sure, but the fact that Kunai's movement feels incredibly intuitive and fluid also plays a big part of just how satisfying a game this is to play. Aside from the fairly standard running and jumping, you're very quickly given the Kunai, which is both the name of the game and your first piece of equipment. You use these Kunai essentially like a grappling hook, attaching them to certain surfaces to climb to otherwise unreachable platforms or swing across gaps too large to jump over. What already felt like a really fluid movement system is given an entirely new dimension by these titular pieces of gear. You'll pretty quickly be zipping around the world and loving how enjoyable simple movement feels. Which ties nicely into the platforming sections of the game. After clearing your first couple of levels, Kunai begins to throw some really interesting platforming challenges at you, making excellent use of your situational awareness in the gear you're unlocking. The way the game ramps up the complexity of its platforming puzzles feels natural. You start out with some fairly standard running and jumping sections, and before long, you're timing rope swings to opening and closing spike traps, or trying to thread yourself through an area without bouncing off some electrified walls. Honestly, I only have a single gripe with how movement works in the first few hours of the game, that you can't change the length of your rope once you've grappled onto a surface, which can make swinging across gaps feel a little bit trickier than it should. If the timing of you using a kunai is off even a little, you'll end up hanging from a too short rope with no way to fix it, short of detaching yourself and hoping you can hit the right spot with the correct length of rope as you fall to your doom. The only reason this is even a noticeable problem is down to how brutal some of the game's checkpoints are. When you die, Kunai sends you back to the last checkpoint you found, big machines that you interact with to save your progress and restore your health. These checkpoints tend to be at the start of an area or right before a boss fight, and there's a lot of ground between them. Dying can result in a long trek back, and if you're stuck on a particularly tricky combat encounter or a bit of platforming, it can sometimes be minutes before you're in a position to even try again. These issues are exacerbated somewhat by a lack of tutorials. I get that Kunai is a game that leans heavily on experimenting to figure out the best way to use your equipment or kill an enemy, but there are some basic pieces of knowledge that the game withholds from you that can cause some frustrations until you figure out something the game probably should have told you. For example, I spent some time struggling to get through an area without taking serious damage from turrets that would rapidly spray bullets at me. I tried destroying them, but found they were immune to my sword attacks, and I was taking a serious amount of damage just trying to dodge past their relentless barrages. That was until I accidentally discovered I could simply deflect bullets with my attack, which meant I could easily destroy what had previously been invincible enemies. Figuring stuff like this out feels thrilling, especially during boss fights, but it comes at the cost of a lot of pain leading up to those discoveries, and I feel like Kunai could have done a better job balancing between teaching you the basics and giving you the room to experiment and learn things for yourself. A lack of fast travel also hurts the experience a little. Kunai features an interconnected world that slowly opens up more and more as you acquire new abilities that let you explore more new avenues. But as the game continues to open up, you'll find yourself having to backtrack more often, and the further into the game you go, the longer it takes to simply get from where you are to where you need to go, which can cause the game to feel like it grinds to a halt whenever you need to cross from one side of the map to the other. But while these are issues that did cause me some frustration as I played, they didn't ruin the experience for me. While I would occasionally get taken out of the experience by a particularly annoying moment or gauntlet that I needed to run, when I was in full flow, Kunai felt like a really great experience. The platforming and combat are so intuitive and fluid that it was incredibly easy to get lost in the experience of playing again. And if you're a fan of slick 2D action, Kunai is a game you might not want to miss. Thanks very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, consider sticking around here at Words About Games. Our content includes review impressions of games big and small, a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing the happenings in and around the games industry, weekly opinion videos, reactions, debate-driven top 5 and top 10 lists, a regular Hall of Fame series where we discuss our favourite games, and indie game spotlights. We also stream every Friday and Saturday at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames. Most importantly, have a brilliant day.